If you've ever tried fishing for sheepshead, then you already know they're one of the trickiest fish you'll ever try to catch. But if you've got the right rigs, the right baits, and you're fishing the right structure, the sheepshead just cannot resist. Hello everybody, welcome to Aquaholic Fishing. My name is Randy. If you're new here, thanks for being here. Today it's all about that crazy sheepshead. They call it the convict fish because of those stripes on the side, right? I don't think so. They call it the convict fish because if you sit there long enough and you're not paying attention, that thing is going to rob you blind. Where do you find the sheepshead? Bridges, columns, structure, rocks, all those obvious spots. But if you know where the bait is at, moreover the barnacles, the crabs, the shrimp, things like that, in the structure or on or around the structure, you're going to find the sheepshead without a doubt. What do the sheepshead eat that we can put on a bait? We're not usually going to put an oyster or a clamshell. We can put the oyster itself, or we can put the clam and then put some sort of a thread to keep that on the hook. But in my experience, live shrimp, live fiddler crabs, live mud crabs, any type of live bait like a sand flea, those all work extremely well when fishing for the sheepshead. Always looking for current, always looking for structure. What setup is best when targeting the sheepshead? I think anything from a 7-foot to an 8-foot fishing rod is absolutely incredible. These rods should be medium power, fast action, in my personal opinion. This happens to be a 7'6", medium power, fast action rod. If you have anything close to that, between the 7-foot and 8-foot range, those will work perfectly fine. Those out there working with bigger, heavier tackle, to me, that's just going to be way too aggressive for that little tiny bite, that little bit of chewing that a sheepshead does. In order to get the most effective bite, make sure you can feel it. 3,000 to 4,000 as far as the reel goes, anything you want to use. If there's a certain brand you like, fantastic. If there's a certain brand you can afford, even better. Whatever works for you is great. I like my main line to be about 20 to 30 pound test. I like braid if you like to use mono, fluorocarbon, whatever. If you like using a bait caster versus a spinning reel, either one will work just fine. I like the sensitivity, the fast tip, and I like to be able to put my hand down here because the bite from the sheepshead is extremely subtle. I can actually feel the sheepshead chewing down there on the bait and on my hook in the butt of my rod. That's extremely important because when these guys bite, if you're looking to feel that tap, tap, tap on your rod, by the time you get that tap, 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 they're gone. Always watching this line the entire time. Become a line watcher when you're fishing for the sheepshead. If you're not a line watcher when you're fishing for the sheepshead and your line is always tight or taut, you better be ready to set that hook immediately with that fast action. You just have to, because by the time they grab it, if they feel any type of resistance, they're gone, and they probably have your bait as well. These guys are the thieves of the sea. They call them the convict fish, but I don't think it's just because of their stripes and colors. I think it's because they can steal better than any other fish out there. Use whatever line works best for you. I really like this super braid right here from Yozuri. I go with somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds. If you like running a 50-pound braid or a 15-pound braid, do whatever works best for you. If you're not breaking off and you're catching fish, it's correct. I like to bring some sort of a bait bucket. If you don't have a bait bucket that has an aerator to keep your bait alive, well, guess what? I guess you're going to be fishing with dead shrimp, dead sea lice, fish bites, oysters, clams, something like that. I like to use an aerator to keep my bait alive, whether it's sea lice, shrimp, whatever the case may be. There is no right or wrong as far as fluorocarbon, monofilament. If you prefer one over the other, phenomenal. I use a lot of monofilament. These little guys right here are great, but they can get pretty darn expensive. You can buy a full spool for about the same price. Guess what? They're the same thing, guys. Don't think because this is leader material and this is just fluorocarbon or monofilament that one is better than the other. They're pretty much the same thing. I've tested them out many a times. 30-pound test, 20-pound test, 40-pound test, 50-pound test. Use whatever you like to use. I like to start small And if I break off, guess what? I'm gonna upgrade. I usually start around a 20, maybe a 30, and I stay around that area for the most part. If I have to go up to a 40 or a 50, that's because there's a ton of structure in the area, a shipwreck, big sharp jagged rocks, whatever the case. One thing about these are super convenient. They're a lot more convenient than these here, right? So what you can do is once you run out here, don't go buy more, go buy a bigger spool, put your spool on there a little bit. They're a lot more convenient than running around this inside of your tackle bag, tackle box, cooler, or whatever. Less is more a lot of times, especially if you're out there and you're carrying it while you're out there fishing. Sheepshead are known to be hard to catch, guys. They're gonna hit that with a slight tap, a quick pickup. A lot of times they're just gonna hold it in their mouth. But if you have a very sensitive rod, it's important because you will actually feel them chewing and feel a little bit of that weight while they're sitting there doing that. If you don't have that type of sensitivity, if you're using a 10-foot surf rod to catch sheepshead, you're likely not going to feel what's going on. And hook sets are free, so I guess you could sit there and just hook set every couple of minutes to see if you've got one. But to me, the lighter the tackle and the lighter the setup that you can get away with, the lighter the weight, the lighter the reel, the lighter the rod, the lighter the line, lighter the leader. To me, the lighter you can be with any type of fishing, not just the sheepshead, is gonna be better off. If you can go weightless, that's perfect because it's a more natural presentation. You add weight because of current, because of wind, because of the conditions. But if you do not have to add weight, don't. Alrighty folks, let's talk about these rigs real quick here. This first one is going to be the sweeper jig. Whatever you want to use as your main line, that's your prerogative. Main line, coming over to a swivel, coming over to your leader, going over to your sweeper jig. That sweeper jig is going to fall down in the water column. It's going to steady itself just like that. That crab could be hooked here and sitting up there in a real offensive or defensive position, whatever way you want him to. If you're fishing vertical, meaning straight down on a piling, straight down on some bridge structure, something like that, this is where I would use this. I would go with something with the smallest hook that you can get away with. The sheepshead has a very small mouth. If you go with a big hook, he's not going to be able to get in there to that hook point. You're going to miss him. Or he's going to get to that hook point, you're not going to feel him. Always thinking the smallest amount of weight, the smallest hook. I love that Spro Power Swivel. I love the number 2 size and the number 4 size. It pretty much handles every type of fishing that I need to do inshore. Offshore, I'll go a little bit bigger, and that is a size 2 or a size 4. All right, here's the next one. This is the Freeline rig. This is my favorite. Why is it my favorite? Because I can throw this thing out to the sheepshead, and it's gonna give me the most natural presentation, just like the sheepshead would see on a regular basis. No weight added, no strike deterrence, no problems whatsoever. But with wind, current, all types of other variables out there, this may not be your best option. Main line, swivel, leader material, fishing hook, number 2 and number 4 power swivel from Spro. I've got a bigger hook on there right now for demonstration purposes only, but I like to go with a number 1 or a 1/0 mosquito hook from Owner. Something like that works really well. These are the lighter wire. These are a little heavier wire. Use what you can get away with. If you feel like you're going to get broken off or you're going to get that hook point or that hook straightened out because of the sheepshead size in your area, maybe not use the light wire. Maybe use the heavier wire. If you use heavier gauged material, it's going to potentially be a strike deterrent. I'm not saying that it is or it isn't, but it'll also affect the movement of your live bait a whole lot more when you're putting a giant gauge wire through versus a smaller gauge of wire through a live bait presentation. To me, when you're using a live bait presentation, you're going to want to use as few things as possible that might make it a strike deterrent. Now, sheepshead are out there chewing on barnacles, structure, all this stuff out there. Are they going to be worried about a little bit of a thick hook? Probably not. If we're using that free line and it's just too high in the water column, we think they might be a little bit lower down, I just use a little clamshell or a little split shot. I carry some real small ones and I carry some bigger ones. That way I can add a little bit of weight or a lot of weight depending on where they might be inside of that water column. Go with as small as you can get away with again, and then go up from there incrementally. You don't want to use too much, but you want to get down to where you're trying to get down to in the water column and get away from the hard heads, other type of trash fish that you may not be wanting to catch, to where you can get it in the zone or that strike zone where the sheepshead are sitting. So the free line rig is basically the exact same thing as a split shot rig. You're just going to add a little bit of a split shot to it. Where? You can add it up near the swivel if you want to. It'll keep it from sliding down. If your leader is a lot longer, you might want to go down a little bit closer to the hook. I'm not too worried about putting it right on the hook because, again, if they're biting on all these crazy things down in there and they got them big human-like teeth, they're not worried about cavities. I doubt they're worried too much about a little bit of metal or a little bit of lead, but they might be. So experiment a little while you're out there. Next rig here that we're going to talk about is the knocker rig. Main line, swivel, leader material, weight, hook. Knocker rig, when that hook or some of our hardware, maybe our weight, gets caught up in the rocks or inside of that structure, and we're over here pulling on this main line, that weight can intentionally hit that hook and release the hook point and potentially free your rig. So a lot of times if you're in an area with a lot of structure, that knocker rig is a real good choice because it might save some hardware for you as far as your terminal tackle along the way. Same swivel size, Spro Power swivel, number 2 or number 4. Same hook size. That Owner Mosquito, number 1 or 1/0, somewhere around there is great. Again, demonstration purposes only. I have a little bit bigger, heavier gauge wire as far as the hook goes. You may want a shorter distance between your hook and your swivel as far as your leader material goes. So why are we putting up another one that is exactly the same? If you look at it closely, it's not exactly the same, right? Our placement of our weight here is above the swivel. Here is below the swivel. Knocker rig, what some here will call a Carolina rig. In the saltwater side, this is considered a fish finder rig. So, exact same setup here. The only thing that is different is the placement of our weight. Here it's above the swivel, here it's below the swivel. So above the swivel on the fish finder rig, below the swivel on the knocker rig. Exact same setup. Distance between your leader and your hook point might be a little bit longer, might be a little bit shorter. To me, the longer you go with your leader, the more chance you're gonna have with getting hung up. Length, distance, hook size, weight size, swivel size, all of that is extremely important as far as fishing the area, getting the sheepshead to bite, and not causing too much of a problem as far as getting your hardware, as far as getting your terminal tackle hooked up inside of the rocks or whatever's going on down in there. Remember folks, everything that we're doing when we go out there to chase these sheepshead and target them is going to be weather, current, and all these different variables. It's going to depend on those situations, and this slip float rig here is no different. The current and the wind can wreak havoc on this type of rig. Some will say, well, maybe you shouldn't fish in the current. If you're fishing in the current, you're right there where the sheepshead are feeding. You're right where the sheepshead belong. Get out there in those areas that have current, but use those bridge columns. Use anything out there as far as structure goes, use that as a decoy. So in other words, what I'm saying is when the fish are feeding, they're feeding in those high current areas, but they're gonna hide behind a piling, a bridge column, any type of area that creates some sort of an eddy, gives the place a fish to hide and still ambush, because those areas will be where a lot of bait and whatnot collects down into those areas. So we're fishing the current because that's an area that they like to hang out, but sheepshead, just like any other fish, there's times where they want to take a break. And guess what? You want to get them when they're on break or when they're actively feeding, no matter what's going on. We're trying to entice them, trying to get them to bite, which leads me to this one here. One of my favorites, the slip float rig. A lot of people think this is complicated. It's not. Main line, leader material, hook. To get these things out of the way first and foremost, Swivels, same size. Number 2 and number 4, Spro, power swivel. Hooks, same size. Number 1 owner, mosquito hook. Something small, the smallest you can get away with. If you like Gamakatsu, run it. If you like some other brand, Eagle Claw or whatever else, go ahead and use those. I'm just saying this is what I use or what I have right now. It doesn't mean I'm sponsored by owner or anything else. Got our hook and leader out of the way. We come up to our swivel. We can put our weight here at this location, or we don't have to put any weight at all at that location. Most of these floats already have a weight inside of the float itself. If you don't want to place your weight here, that's fine. You can just take these clamshells or these split shots, put them down here at the lower third closest to your hook, and run it that way. That's perfectly fine. The reason I like to throw this rig with my weight in this position is because when this goes down inside of the water column, it's falling a whole lot more naturally on that shrimp or whatever it is that you have in there. If you have it weighted at that point, it's not gonna look as natural as it would without it being weighted. That's why I prefer to have my weight up here, but there's times where I've got my weight down here. Some people will fish it to where they have a combination of a weight in both spots. So I've got hook, leader, swivel, main line, weight, bead, float, bead. Some of these floats have a little protector down here. You don't really need that, but I like to use beads on both sides. Sometimes on every little apparatus, if you put a bead, you're gonna have more chances of getting hooked up onto something in that structure that you don't want to. Personal preference if you want to use beads or you don't want to use beads. If you notice some sort of heavy wear on your line, on your leader, on your swivel, any of the components, I suggest using a bead. When I come up to the top, the whole point of this here is this little bobber stopper. You could take a piece of this line and cut it off and just tie it on there, make many of different types, but all this is here is adjustable. So as I move it up, my float's gonna stop there. So as the float goes down on the cast, goes into the water column, it's going to start to rise up. It's gonna rise up to wherever I have this bobber stopper set at. If I wanna go lower into the water column, I'm going to raise this bobber stopper up, and then that is gonna come up even higher. I usually run them somewhere between about 2 and 8 feet. If you run them any more than that, and even sometimes at 8 foot, it's pushing it, because when you go to cast that thing out, this thing's gonna helicopter like crazy, and it can cause problems. That's where you're gonna notice, hey, is it more important to have the weight here, or the weight here, or a weight in both positions? Wind, current, when we're fishing, there's a ton of variables out there, folks. We have to understand that that's why we're showing multiple rigs here, because when them variables come into play, hey, I'm gonna go from the slip float, I'm gonna go to the knocker, I'm gonna go to the fish finder, there's no wind, there's no current, okay, I'm gonna free line this thing now. Speaking of weights, when you're running that fish finder rig or that knocker rig, be cognizant. Right now it's probably 1.25 ounces, that's probably 1 ounce. Sometimes only 1/2 ounce is needed, sometimes 1/4 ounce, some no weight at all. Don't get hard-headed and think that you have to have a certain size weight. Let the structure, let the wind, let the current, let those conditions decide what weight you're gonna use. Always use the least amount of weight possible. When we're talking about the hook, just like I said earlier, always trying to use the smallest hook possible. The Sheepshead has a very small mouth with a lot of teeth inside of it. We don't want to break off, we don't want to straighten no hooks, but we want the least amount of weight and the smallest hook that we can possibly get away with. Remember folks, we're not looking for slack water, we're looking for moving water. Target tide changes. Push those baits right up against the structure. I know sometimes it might be a little intimidating because you think you're gonna break off. Stay patient. Do not get frustrated. You are going to break off. You are going to lose terminal tackle. It is fishing, not catching. Please stay patient, and it's going to help you get that sheepshead bite. Folks, all I'm doing is sharing things that have worked for me. These are not opinions, these are facts because they have caught fish for me in the past. It does not mean that I know everything. These might work for you, these might not work for you in your area. If you're using something completely different, please share that down in the comments. let me know. So that way I can learn something too, try your rigs and your methods, and maybe add something to my tool bag and my toolbox to get better at sheepshead fishing as well. That's what this fishing community is supposed to be all about. I'm not going to share all my spots with you, nor do I expect you to share all your spots with me, but we can share information some way, shape, or form that will help us all get better as we move forward, chasing these crazy, tough to get sheepshead. Until the next time, if you liked what you've seen here, please hit the like, please subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of Aquaholic Fishing. We'll see you guys out on the water.